Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Insider Insight. Before we start today's discussion, let's welcome our guest speaker, Paddy Johnson, the Joint Professor of NYU and Parsons. Welcome, Paddy.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So, first, tell us about what you do and how you got into doing it.
Well, I am a writer and a teacher, and I also am a sort of, for lack of a better word, organizer of art events. And I got into this in a sort of backwards way. I got started as a blogger in 2005, and that was when blogs were like a really big deal, and I really taught myself how to write, and I really inserted myself into the art world in a way that I kind of gained a very big reputation for the work I did as I did it, and it was good time to be doing that kind of work. I guess the rest is history, as it is. But that's sort of the very beginnings of my origin story.
Thanks for sharing. What's an average day teaching at NYU and Parsons look like to you?
Well, I will. An average day might include coming into my office and preparing for the day's seminar or class. At NYU, we run classes that are 4 hours long. So that includes a screening of a film and then, reading about texts that kind of reinforce or give additional context to what we're looking at. So I always want to make sure that I'm very prepared for those classes. So I'm always, rereading the readings, making sure that I have questions prepared. If I do a presentation, I'm putting that together. And of course, there is some grading of student work. So, beforehand, I may meet with the student to see how they're progressing on an assignment or, things like that. So very teachery types of things.
Great. So you've been in the art industry for many years now.
Yes.
Have you seen any changes in the industry?
Enormous change, in fact, because, of course, as you know, the internet was not always with us. So when I started, the internet was really sort of a burgeoning place where people really didn't know what it was like, what it was going to be like. And I think there was a lot of sort of excitement and a lot of kind of ideas of like utopias that would spring forth from the internet. And now that we are living in that burgeoning, well, still burgeoning utopia, I think people are a little bit more disillusioned about all the things that they thought were going to be super great. Turns out there's a lot of trolls on the internet and that sort of thing. But there have been some fairly significant changes for the art industry. There has traditionally been a very big lack of transparency in terms of prices. If something sold in LA, you might not know about it in New York and you could get it for a cheaper price. This is in the art market. But that sort of thing has completely gone away. So there's a lot, because there are price databases and people can really track artworks and track individual artists in ways that they couldn't before. But of course, another thing that we're seeing is that there is, and we see this in all industries, there is a sort of middle market squeeze. So the galleries at the top end of the market are doing very well, and the museums and art centers at the top end are doing very well. In the small galleries, the feeder galleries, as we like to call them, the galleries that sort of nurture the talent that eventually goes to the blue chip galleries, are really struggling. So that's certainly a challenge for anybody entering the field.
Well, we all know that New York is the center of the art world. However, lots of works are now being done online remotely. So, in your opinion, how important location is in this work?
Well, I guess I would begin by saying that New York is still important. It's still a center, and I don't really see that changing. However, I do think it's less important that artists be here indefinitely. Let's say, there is a look at Los Angeles, LA, as a not necessarily, I wouldn't call it a new center, but a center that is rising in prominence. Um, and I think that cities are and artists are more networked than they ever have been. So it is not essential that artists, that cultural workers in general live in New York uh, always, but they should always be visiting New York for sure. Um, and they should sort of generally be aware of what's happening around the country. So I guess the sort of short answer is you don't have to live here. You should definitely visit here. And it's actually not a bad idea. I always tell students, not a bad idea to live here for a short period of time, figure out whether you like it, get your contact, and then if you want to see some other place, you have your work done here.
Awesome. What are the hard skills and soft skills needed to be successful in the art industry?
Well, I think that I mean it's kind of a difficult question to answer in the art industry because in a way it's all a lot of it is soft skills, but the hard skills are definitely a developed eye, to understand a visual arts language and to build that. And that there's no shortcut to that. That takes a little bit of time. It takes regular viewing of art. It takes going to different large events that happen annually or semi-annually. The biennials are always a good example of that. But a lot of art is also networking, who you know, and that is why, uh, in this is one of the reasons that city centers remain important because in a city center like New York, you can't be a professional and go to a networking party and have not seen the latest show at the Whitney, let's say, because you have to be able to talk about it. If you live in a smaller center, it is not necessarily essential for you to know that. And that makes it very difficult to really build a large scene. There has to be that kind of desire from the people living there to really kind of live and breathe that environment. So, so those I think just kind of knowing what's going on, being able to talk to people and tell them about what you're doing without being um, too aggressive about it. I think it's really there's certainly a skill in always telling people what you're up to and trying to get people out and involved in that without pushing it on people to the extent that they don't want to come out because you're so annoying. So that is something that takes a little bit of time to develop.
Of course. Um, please talk about your experience of teaching students and what you see making them successful.
Well, I teach at a graduate and undergraduate level. And I would say that the students that do the best, sort of uniformly, are the students that work the hardest. And I've also seen that, like, tracking my students after the fact. Because there are plenty of students that begin with lots of talent, but if they don't put the work in, um, there's just, they might pass a course, but how well they succeed after the fact is, that tends, the professional career tends to reveal poor work habits. So if, as a teacher, I always really try to have structured assignments where students are required to give me things at a particular time. That's actually not that different than anybody else, but I'm very kind of, I place importance on getting the work done and doing the job as well as you can, because that ultimately is the thing that really leads students to success. And doing it well means not just hard work, but being curious about what why things are the way they are and understanding structures so that you know how to navigate them. So that's another thing that I'm always trying to make clear when I give seminars about the art world, how different movements evolved, and where they are now. I'm always trying to explain the structures that they grew out of, because these are the structures that students will be navigating to. I mean, they always change with time, but understanding sort of a basic understanding of how things work is essential.
Working hard and being curious is definitely very good advices to students. And, can you give a few more actionable pieces of advices to students in the age range from 18 to 25?
About things they can do to be successful in the art world, um, or things that I do to help prepare them for the art world.
So things students can do.
Things students can do and think, okay, well, I mean, one thing I always say, and I've said this actually just a few minutes ago, but it's actually something that's built into a lot of my courses, is seeing art. So, we often, you don't want to just go to a museum. You want to go to a museum with a friend or somebody who knows more than you, and then talk about what you've seen. Try to think about why you like it, why you don't like it, what, try to think about what the space is, and all this sort of, and I think with contemporary art in particular, context is very important to understanding any kind of work. And what I mean by context is, what is going on in the world when this thing was made. Because if you understand that, you understand why that particular object or thing looks the way it does, and you understand the time and the history of it better. And that I always find is exceptionally exciting. So, that's, these things, they sound very basic, almost like not exciting. Go see some art. But actually, the really, like, these are the mundane things that accumulate, build up to something that constitutes real lived knowledge. So, I mean, that I think, going to museums, reading journals, and online publications, and talking to other professionals, because once you understand, like, if you don't go to museums and galleries first, you're not going to really understand what you like and don't like. If you don't understand what you like, don't like, you're not going to understand who you should talk to, who will be important to you. So there's a real kind of sort of path to this. So once you understand the things that you're interested in, then you can reach out to people who do those things And that's when you really start seeing students jump from level to level to level, and that's really exciting.
That's great advice. Uh, Students in that age range should really spend their time to figure out what they really like and what path they really want to take.
Yeah.
My last question would be, what's the biggest problem that's faced by students um, graduating from art to get jobs?
Well, there are a couple problems. One, it's a very tight market, um, and the compensation at the higher levels is very good, and at the lower levels, where most students start, it's not very good. So the biggest challenge that I see for students is trying to figure out how to get from that entry level place up to a place where their pay is going to match, um, their passions. And it's certainly not impossible. There's actually quite a bit of opportunity in the art world, but it takes a certain kind of, you have to be savvy about and goal oriented about what you want to achieve. And that's, I mean, it goes back to what do you like, but it is actually a little bit more complicated than that, because it's not just okay, what do you like, what are your interests. It's also the second part of that is, what do you like, once you have what do you like, what are your interests, is um, what are my goals. So I think one goal is, I want to make X amount of money, and I want to work in this field. And once you establish those goals, then you can sort of set out achieving them. But I think in the art world, you definitely have to have those goals, or you will get distracted and you won't reach them. It is very easy to do a lot of work for no money if you let that happen. So, because the one thing that museums and galleries and different cultural institutions always need is sort of cheap labor. So it's really important to make sure that you don't fall in that boat.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here today, Paddy. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Likewise, thank you.
And thank you for watching this episode of Insider Insights, and we will see you next time.